Hey guys, Dan here. Before we get into the video, I just want to point out that next Wednesday it is going to be 8 years of That Kaito Dan, and because of that I want to do a Q&A video, so I'm going to need some questions from you guys. Please leave a maximum of 2 questions in either the post on the community side of this channel or on my pinned tweet over on my Twitter. Read all the information on screen as well, and closing dates for questions will be the next Tuesday. Hope you enjoy the video. Hello ladies, gentlemen and others, my name is Dan, the voice behind That Kaito Dan, and welcome to my reaction to episode 3 of RWBY Fairy Tales. But before we get started, as always, please make sure you're watching this episode first through roosterteeth.com to support the show and the fantastic people behind it. Yeah, we are already halfway through this little short series, which is a bit of a bummer. But on the positive side, we are now moving on to one of the most fascinating tales in the entire collection, The Shallow Sea, which is one of 2 tales in the book, which are detailing a possible origin for the Faunus, the other being the Judgment of Faunus, which is unfortunately not in this collection. I would have liked that as well, just to compare the 2 for the animation side of things. But on the plus side, at least we're getting one of them. And again, this is a very fascinating tale because it's exploring Faunus history and a way that they explain, or at least try to explain, the origin of why they are so different to regular humans. And I'm very curious to see how that's explored in this animation. Also getting to see the God of Animals, which is a key character in both this and the Judgment of Faunus. And as ever, I'm gonna explore how this animation explores the tale, and also a few elements from the book itself that is not explored for obvious reasons and whatnot. So yeah, very excited to get into this one and see how they portray such a key tale in Faunus culture, and just see how it explores such very important details in the world of Remnant. So yeah, as always, let's get into it. Count it down with me. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. The Shallow Sea.
Faunus parents entertain their children with bedtime stories about where they came.
Yeah, compared to the Judgment of Faunus, this is more of a children-oriented tale.
We were chosen. But chosen by whom?
Oh, we're already seeing the arc. Huh.
Those who were a little more than human.
Interesting.
To sail to the shallow sea to discover their destiny.
Oh, there's the God of Animals. Ooh, that voice.
Who you are. Leave this boat. Enter the water. It will wash your old life.
That's a cool voice and a cool design as well.
It's been just below the surface.
It's interesting we're already at this point in the story. This is past the halfway point of the story. This is 5 minutes.
Some of the people left.
Yeah, this is one explanation of the Faunus traits.
Others were more skeptical.
This is interesting. I'm very interested in the way that they're presenting the story.
Fables often teach lessons, such as the importance of looking beneath the skin. But for Faunus, the story of the shallow sea,
And very important for our world, of course, as well.
it reminds them from a young age that their own lives have value.
This is interesting because that's the end of the story, and we're not even halfway through the short.
Grow up quickly. As they mature, they learn darker stories, in which the truth lies closer.
Oh, wait a minute. Is this actually gonna...
Many years ago,
I think this is gonna bring in the Judgment of Faunus.
there was a war between humans and animals.
Yeah. Oh, wow. They're bringing the 2 together for this. Okay. That's interesting. I'm surprised they're bringing both in. But again, they share so many similarities. I guess that it kind of works. This is interesting. Oh.
Neither and both. Why
This voice is fantastic. I don't have to see who it is.
Like us. Why must everyone
Talking
be the
cat.
same?
We worry about what they might do to us.
So we have something in common after all.
Very big emphasis on like how
May do, but
similar and yet different we are, and or different the humans and faunas are.
Humans are even more capable of destroying things than they are at creating.
Animals are stronger than us, but they will not join us in fighting the Grimm.
You tried to control us. Why should we risk our lives to protect yours?
Very interesting.
You bothered us. All we want is to be free.
They got very fair complaints against each other, and fair understanding of why they want to work with each other, but
Safety and
the differences are making them so divided.
the worst about one another, but you are more alike than you know.
Yeah, again, similar and yet different, and that's what makes them so divide.
And embrace your differences.
I'm so fascinated by this merger of the stories.
Here, but only if all submit to my judgment. Whatever.
Because this is a different origin compared to the Shallow Sea, but they do share elements like the god of animals, and how this is a more mature story compared to the Shallow Sea. Uh-oh. Magical mist. Whoa! Bear Man, or Panther Man. Is that an ancestor to Gira? And again, I'm loving the use of the shadow people for this as well. Oh my god, he's hard! Oh my god, she's hard!
Perhaps they have.
the furry fans' first awakening. Yeah, some of these guys don't even like remember or care anymore about whether or not they were an animal or a human to begin with.
Then what are we?
better than both.
Interesting. And they have the shared enemy now of the Grimm.
An enemy.
Exactly, yeah. And yet, even though they are like seeing the similarities now more than the differences, we get this.
We don't even know what you are.
Were we so narrow-minded when we were human?
Yep. Yeah, you're seeing things from the animal's perspective now.
In search of a place they could live peacefully together, where they could become the best versions of themselves. These fables may seem fantastic, yet they reflect the real and unfortunate history of conflicts between humans.
That's the thing, this is a very important
And though different versions
tale, not just in terms of like a fictional origin, but a true like exploration of their actual real life experiences.
as well as the notion that humans and faunas need each other to survive. If we all set aside our differences and work toward a shared purpose, how much better would Remnant be for everyone?
This is very interesting. I'm loving how they portray this compared to how it is in the book. Again, with this two-story merger. And I don't recognize the voices in this. I don't know if that's RT staff they have in it, or if it's just smaller actors that I don't know. Other than, like, the Cadens and that. Rachel's in there. Okay, so yeah, this is very, very interesting. Because now I'm thinking on how the single stories are as tales and the elements to them. But also now I'm thinking on the merge story here. I guess in a sense I'll start with my thoughts on the Shallow Sea, which, as I was like discussing a little bit in this, compared to the Judgment of the Faunas, the Shallow Sea is more aimed towards kids, and given a bit more of a fanciful origin for their creation, or why they are so different to humans. The parents tell the story almost like we are faunas because we were able to accept our differences and accept that we were different to several other people. We were seen as outcasts, and we, instead of letting it hold us down, we embraced it, and we were able to immerse ourselves in other people who are much like us, and thus why we moved to this island with the god of animals, which this island is played off the idea that it is the origin as well of menagerie. And that's an interesting detail there as well, because Ozpin explained in his notes that beyond one of the reasons why he wanted to focus this story and feature it in the book, in universe, he understands why many people these days don't actually like this story, especially on the Faunus side, because the idea of moving to a island that is all for them has kind of had a bit of a toxic air about it in real life now, because they were forced to move to Menagerie, and given the idea that this is their reward, their makeup for all the turmoil that they've experienced in the past, which in turn is more or less to some people seen as, oh, just move over there, you could do whatever you want over in Menagerie, just don't infect or don't influence our way of life, don't basically immerse yourself in our culture. It's very much a hollow gesture to some people, to some Faunus. That's why the Shallow Sea story isn't as widely accepted and shared as it was perhaps way in the past. And one element of that story I also liked as well is, like, in the book, there's frequent mentions of, yes, the Grimm also exists, but for the sake of the story, don't think about them. It's just the humans and the god of animals and the Faunus. Don't think about the Grimm, which I felt like that was a way that the story is also trying to make kids, as they grow up, not let the negative side of the Grimm affect them, to feed off the Grimm themselves. So I very much enjoyed that element. In terms of how it's portrayed in this, it's interesting that they went straight to the part of the god of animals inviting these guys who he saw as outcasts or people who were treated poorly for being different, and invited them to his island. There's some elements that are missed from the story by just going to that element first and then ending it from there, which was the god of animals lived on an island full of animals. The only animals that weren't on there were humans, and he wondered why they were not a part of that, and he wanted to bring them on. So that led to his search for people who could, he believed, felt worthy or felt deserved to come to his island. We don't get that mostly explored in this. It's mostly just an exploration of, like, people who are outcasted, but not so much the motivations by the god of animals himself. But they still have some of the same elements of, like, the people who jumped in were willing to believe. Those who didn't are showing that underneath the surface, without the need of the shallow sea, they revealed their true selves as judging others for being different and judging something that they don't believe in or don't feel natural, very much like how they were treated. So it's almost creating them as like just as bad as the people that they were being abused by or being mistreated by. And that's why the story is more for kids in a light-hearted sense, or at least a more inspirational sense, to say you are a Faunus because you were able to accept who you are, and you are treating yourself as everything that you are on the outside and on the inside. The outside is just showing that you are accepting that through being a Faunus. And those who are humans who ostracize you will never be in the same self-confidence, same self-belief as you. And then moving into the Judgment of Faunus is a more mature story where there's less of a fanciful element of that, to where there's this more focus on the conflict between the humans and the Faunus. Again, the fact that there's a god of animals in both is interesting, which gives some connecting tissue there. But in this one, it's more about, like, focusing on what makes us so divided. People are the humans are hating the animals for what they fear the animals could do, and in turn the animals are fearing what the humans are doing to them. They never look past their rather toxic and misguided viewings on all of the other side, rather than judging by the actions of the person themselves. Like the god was saying, like, you were judging by what you fear in the others, and not so much the actions that you see the others doing. So that causes all the division there. And it's interesting that in one element as well, the humans and the animals both are confident that the god of animals is going to judge for them, because they view the god of animals more for their human traits or their animal traits, and that shows a little bit of their deeper side, that they are very much focused on themselves. The animals understandably are focused on their well-being, their freedoms, and the humans are focused on wanting peace and wanting to be able to live in comfort, and yet they're fearing the wild nature of the animals and their inability to help out with the grim. And then in this story, it's more a case of like the Faunus are the acceptance of trying to see things from both perspectives. The animals are seeing the humans' experiences of their strengths, their weaknesses, their ability to create and destroy. Whereas more so the story focuses on the human side, focusing on them experiencing all the prejudice and the turmoil that the animals went through. As we saw at the end there, it was like, were we so narrow-minded? And yet they were, so they experienced that firsthand. In terms of like, the stories, both of them are very plausible in terms of like their origin, but the existence of the god of animals is also a element that makes them feel like they're not real, because we know the god brothers, they were, it seems like they were around before the creation of the Faunus. When they left, that's when the Faunus was made, because Ozma doesn't recognize any Faunus beforehand. He only recognized them afterwards and realized that there was a thing called the Faunus. So there's elements to both stories that are true, but it feels like they're also false. It's more a case of exploring themes and motifs and elements that try to explain current culture between the humans and the Faunus, rather than actual factual truths to their origins, which makes them both very fascinating. And yet, in a turn, it's interesting that they merged the two here through that connecting tissue of the god of animals. And I think that's really interesting, and I really do like that. It helps it separate as well from the book, so it feels more special and unique. You can enjoy the stories through here, but if you want to get a little bit more in-depth and a little more a personal understanding of each single story by themselves, you go for the book. And I'm sure that's like one of the main aims of this short series, is not just explore these tales in animation form, but also promote the book. That's why we're only getting like 6 of them, and then there's 6 other stories that won't be explored, but you can experience in the book. So yeah, that was interesting. There's a lot more that you can dive into both stories. That's the most I can take. I came into this thinking I was just going to be talking about the Shallow Sea, and yet I'm also talking about the judgment of the Faunus as well, and how both stories are merging here, which makes me maybe ramble a bit, so sorry about that. But yeah, I really like this one. This was both stories are fascinating by themselves, but it's even more fascinating now seeing them explored at the same time like this. In terms of like which one I would believe in more, I believe in more the Shallow Sea, because it is more purposely exploring a culture that could be before the creation of the Faunus, and it doesn't like fly in the face of some of the truths that we know of through the Lost Fable truths. But either way, this was a fantastic short. I really like the merger of the two. I think they did well to make it as seamless as possible, even though you are focusing on it feels like the Shallow Sea was given half the story, while the Judgment of the Faunus was given more of the full one. So in that sense, please really do check out the full stories in the full book. I definitely recommend both stories as a full read. But in terms of like this version, I think they did well as in this version. So yeah, fantastic stuff. I think the next one is The Indecisive King, which is a very, very big tale, because it's exploring the other relic. We'll talk about that one next week. But But until next time, have a good day, good night. Oh, I forgot all the usual stuff. Sorry. Yeah. Comment down below, hit the subscribe and bell buttons, follow me on Twitter, Hope you have a good time. Have a good day or good night, and peace out.